The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Mayor Larry Gursslin, it's great to have you on the Big H Podcast.
Good to be here.
You've always been an idea of mine when I sat down and put a list of people that I wanted to have on the show here, and we finally got a chance to sit down. You're in retirement. You're still pretty busy. Tell me a little bit about your day-to-day activities that you do to keep yourself busy.
In Hilton or in Florida?
All together.
Florida, that I just came back from. Pickleball a couple days a week, golf, euchre at night, cocktails from 4:30 to 5. It's obviously a different world down there with 80-degree temperature when it's freezing up here. Up here, it focuses back to family. My grandson and granddaughter sports in Greece, and a lot of times we're out to our cottage at Point Breeze. So weekends and during the day, we're quite often at Point Breeze, out at the cottage, enjoying the lake.
How many months of the year do you spend in Florida?
About 4.
About 4?
We might go down in October, November, but basically January, February, March. Back here in April, and hopefully watch the tulips come up.
So down there, you said you play a lot of pickleball?
I do.
Are you good at it? Do you play with your wife as a partner, or do you play one-on-one?
There's a group of us that we generally go, and there's like 8 of us, and we go together, and we're always switching around. Carol does play, my wife, not as often. She would rather knit, but a couple times a week at least.
Did you say you played golf as well?
Yes.
What type of course do you play down there? Do you play a variety of courses, or you hit the same one?
There's 2 or 3 courses. There's a place called Cross Creek in Fort Myers. They give us a discount because our condo association has 7 tee times, so we get a break. But the price drops dramatically when April comes around, because hundreds of thousands of people leave Florida, come back north, and the price drops down. But I have no idea what my handicap is. Have I gotten a hole in one? Yes, I have.
All right.
8th hole at Gulfview. Yeah.
So when you go to Florida, do you fly down, drive down, or do you a little bit of each?
We have a car. We now leave a car down there, so
Okay.
it's flying down, flying back.
Does it end up being a vacation spot for you and the grandkids and your kids?
Yes. Ironically, while we're down there, we may even leave and go on a cruise, which befuddles some people because they'll say, well, you're already in Florida and now you're taking a vacation on top of a vacation. But yeah, it's a getaway with good health, and we're fortunate and blessed to be in a situation that I know a lot of others are not.
Tell me a little, and you said you played some euchre down there?
Yes.
Same partner, or do you switch partners again? Same question like with the pickleball.
We get 6 or 7 tables.
2
2 years ago, I was in charge running it. We have people that volunteer different years, but we put it together on Thursday nights. You play for a couple of hours, and you spend $1 to join in. You might win $10 if you're lucky. But it's a game that my parents taught me, I think, when I was 10 years old. Um, I've been playing euchre all my whole life. It's a good getaway.
Tell me why euchre is such a good game to hang out with and play. Because I'm same thing.
Well, my thinking is I probably take euchre because you make a decision and you're either going to name Trumpy or not, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a game that goes fairly well and over. I never got into poker because I never understood the difference, and never got into poker. But euchre and other card games, yeah, it's a family tradition as well, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's a good game. You got two children, two parents, perfect
And
4 for 4.
they play euchre, and their children are starting to play euchre. Yeah.
Well, you're leading me right into the family, and we'll go back into your school history and college and things like that. Tell me a little bit about your wife, Carol, and when you met, and how she's been the love of your life for how many
I met
years?
Carol in 75. Um, I love her dearly. She would like for me to say that we met at a church bazaar. In truth, I met her at the California Brew House on Ridge Road. Um, we moved to 58 Hines Street, and yeah, we're blessed with our son Justin and Katie, born in 77 and 80. We moved out of my grandparents' house on Hines Street, and we moved over to West Avenue, across the street from the gazebo. Carol has been my number one supporter. I mean, anything I've virtually been wanting to do, she stood by me. Obviously, running for public office, I needed her support. I have volunteered and served on various organizations, and she has done the same. When the centennial came around in 1984, she attended a meeting of the Centennial Committee being formed for a celebration in 85. I remember she came home and said, guess what? They've elected me chairperson of the Centennial Committee. I'm thinking, with me being on the village board, I'm looking at budgets and trying to put budgets together. So the two of us would sit at a table. This one time, she said, all right, the committee has decided we're going to have fireworks. And I'm thinking, do we want to spend village tax dollars on fireworks? So, but she has been there for the centennial. She was obviously instrumental. If you're from Hilton and you know the Apple Fest, she's been instrumental on the Apple Fest from the get-go, working with Homer Marple, Doug Marple, and Pat Marlowe, coordinating, getting it off the ground. So that's worked out very well. And I give her credit for the celebration of Kathy Turner, our Olympian star. Kathy really never lived in Parma, the town of Parma, or the village of Hilton, but she became known as Hilton's Olympic star.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's was in France and coming home, Carol wanted to know, what are you going to do, Larry, to celebrate her coming home? So she coordinated my going to the airport. I think the band was there. We had a celebration. So she's in the background, not catching a lot of the publicity, but she's very supportive and does a lot of work. Very proud of her.
Did you know this when you were dating, that she had this strengths in her that would complement your strengths and potential leadership in local politics?
No idea. No, I think we dated a year. Yeah, we met in 75. We got married in 76.
Mm-hmm.
She probably would not want it known, but she actually won a summer scholarship to Oxford. And so we went over to Germany. I left her off in London when I was watching the 76 Wimbledon with Arthur Ashe and stuff. And I said, okay, so she's away for the month. And when she came back, I said, that's the woman I'm going to marry.
Very nice. We'll get to you and your schooling a little bit, but where did she do her high school and college?
She was she lived in Greece.
Mhm.
Mother of Sorrows, Cardinamone, class of '69. From there, she worked at Kodak a short period of time. I think in her heart, she knew she wanted to be an English teacher. She went to Canton, and then from there, she got her master's at Brockport,
Mhm.
um, and she ended up teaching English in Brockport
Okay.
20 years.
20 years at the high school level or the
High
middle
school.
school level? Now, you were kind enough to give me this brochure, Unionville Station, Hilton, New York, A Brief History by Larry Gursslin. I've read a lot of it, and it's very well written. Did you have her as your ghostwriter or as your revisionist or editor?
I think the last page I give her, I give her
You do.
credit.
Sure do.
Yeah, I think there's some things in there she probably thinks that were not necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, it was my publication,
Mm-hmm.
um, not paid for by any other outside source.
Mm-hmm.
But the key behind that publication um, was a person who asked me the question, "How did Unionville come about?" and was curious and thought that other people might be interested. And so I spent a couple of years. I went back into the village office, pulled out minutes from the planning board, documented. I found some old newspaper clippings and just assembled it, put it all together. She reviewed it and yeah, made the corrections, and we put it out.
It's very good reading, by the way. I plan to go through it with a fine-tooth comb in the days to come.
Well, can I mention that at the time Unionville started, that your father,
Sure.
the vice mayor, was on board,
Mhm.
and so I want to give him a lot of credit as well. It was not my doing. It was a really team effort of the village board, planning board. Again, it took time, but it all came together. It's I believe, a true asset to the village.
Now, when you talk about planning board and all these other boards, did you serve on any of those boards prior to becoming mayor?
I did not. No, I ran for trustee. Myself and Maurice Sassoon were successful. Um, my living on Hines Street with no children, my actual initial plunge into public service was going to the meetings of the school board in the Henry Street School,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd sit in the back and I thought, I think this interests me. But I attended enough meetings of the school board. Rosemary Foster, I believe, was
Mm-hmm.
the president. And I thought, you got to be crazy to be serving on this school board. So that diminished my hope of. But then it sparked when Doug Marple and John Foster, who were trustees for the village of Hilton, both of those gentlemen, who I have high regard for, decided not to run. And I thought, well, there's an opening there. So I met with Bob Elliott. I came in and I got a copy of the village budget. And when in doing so, he referred to me as Josie's boy, that being my mother. Yeah, that was the start.
Now, you mentioned that you attended a lot of was it school board meetings, and you'd sit in the back. Was that the one meetings you attended?
Yeah.
What enthralled you about that? The policy, the budget information. Like what was going through your mind as you sat through those meetings?
Boy, that's a long time ago.
That's all right. Because what
I remember trying to balance hearing the two sides, hearing people from the audience, some of whom were teachers, against the board, and then trying to decide, well, if I was on the board, what would my opinion be? And it was difficult. It was difficult to think, boy, there was good points on both sides, and I realized that this serving on a board is not as easy as some people think.
So you served as a trustee for how many years?
2 years.
2 years.
2
And those were
years.
2-year terms, I think?
They were 4 years of the former mayor, Tom Yonker,
Mm-hmm.
decided to run for town supervisor. Virtually came over, patted me on the back and said, "Okay, I hope you're ready." And I'm generally not a public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, no, I don't think so. And he said, no. And Tom's support was instrumental in saying, no, I think you can do the job. And I think he gave me the confidence, saying, I can help you. If I'm elected supervisor. So Tom was ready to move on. And I ran for mayor and successful. And that was the beginning.
Was that in 1982?
82.
Okay. What were the differences between the responsibilities between a trustee and a mayor?
There's virtually no difference. The mayor has the role of being fiscal officer for the village. The mayor has certain appointments that can be made, and the appointments would be made subject to village board approval. And but basically, all board members, their votes are pretty much the same. The mayor doesn't have that much, really, in my opinion, power than a village trustee would have.
We all talk about how do you find out what the will of the people is. Obviously, getting elected, they know your, I don't say, platform or what you want to champion for. When you were mayor, how did you find that out? I mean, sometimes I see people go into the family diner for dinner and they get approached by this, that, and the other. How were you able to find opinions during your midterms?
I think a lot of the opinions come to you waiting in line at the Big M,
Mm-hmm.
at the village diner. People, I think, if they get to know you, are not afraid to approach you
Mm-hmm.
and say, I'm thinking of this or different thoughts. I remember when I was running, the question is, well, what are you running? What's your platform?
Mm-hmm.
Low taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants low taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my platforms, and I'll use a fellow by the name of Herb McNaughton,
Yep.
good friend of mine, and he had a slogan: "Communication breeds understanding." And I think I took that to heart because I think if you're communicating and if you're open communication, in our first village newsletter, of which I have ended up appointing Herb McNaughton as our editor, that was the logo we used: "Communication breeds understanding." And so you can be thinking of a lot, but unless you let the people know what are you thinking, you're going to have some diversity there. But I think communication was very, very strong.
So it looks like your first term around as mayor, you served 16 years. Tell me a little, one or two challenges that you were facing during those years, if you remember that far back.
It'd be growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
We, for the most part, the village is like 90% developed. And we had we were looking at various growth and development issues. The water tower, for instance, and having water pressure. We had the need to expand, and we ended up buying Penn Central and putting in the old Hojack line. There was a number of problems just simply come your way. Probably one of the first initial ones was the immediate thought process of consolidating the Hilton Fire Department. That worked out very well. I think it was in 84, 85. It was a 3-year period. You had Charlie Lissow, Steve Spear. I give credit to Steve Spear's wife, Pam. And you had some issues with the fire department. People didn't know it, but I think most people back then thought that the carnival supported the fire department in its entirety, and that's not true. The fire department has their own separate budget than the fire commissioners. So the 5 elected fire commissioners are responsible for the tax rates, and yet you've got the body, and I'll call it the family of the Hilton Fire Department, very close knit community there. The fire department owned the building. The equipment was owned by the village of Hilton, and yet the tax rate was set by the fire commissioners, who owned neither the building. And so it took, and again, I give Charlie Lissow and Steve Spear credit for pushing forward and saying, let's consolidate. Let's take the village equipment worth over millions of dollars and sell it for $1 to the fire commissioners. Let's have the fire department turn the building over to the fire commissioners. It wasn't an easy task, but it was one of the first tasks that we were able to accomplish. We had the public hearing. It included, because the fire district includes parts of Parma, the village, Hamlin, Brockport, or Clarkson. And so it took an effort, but it took 3 years legislation in Albany. So today, the Hilton Fire Department, the commissioners, they're the ones that set the tax rate. We really got out from under the village board approving the fire chief and the line of officers and all of that. Back in the 80s, we would virtually have 2 village board meetings, one for the fire department and one to run the village, and got that down to 1 meeting.
That's success. What about, of course, in our house, McDonald's? Because that didn't improve right away.
You're right. Why didn't it?
I think when my dad came home and said they voted it down at the meeting, I think he said something about, I don't know, was it parking, or I don't have no idea. Probably something with taxes or something. And
well, we knew that.
We were just thinking French fries. That's all we were thinking about.
Yeah. Well, we knew that, again, as growth and development, that McDonald's wanted to come into town. There were 2 houses on South Avenue.
Oh, okay.
And the 2 houses on South Avenue were owned by the same person who ran the bowling alley. And the thought process was that those 2 homes would be torn down and McDonald's would be located there. But we also knew that if that didn't happen, the 2 homes would have to be rezoned from residential to commercial. But we knew that if we didn't approve it, that phase 2, the next was that the McDonald's would go into the bowling alley parking lot. So yes, initially we said no to rezoning those 2 houses at the end of Raintree, and the following month, after we denied McDonald's, they came back with a new proposal, of which we all agreed to.
What do you think about the growth and development of the village? Oh man, it's a huge question. From when you took on mayorship at 82 to where we are today. It's ebbs and flows, it's successes or failures, or its futuristic outlook.
I'm optimistic on the future. I think in the past we could probably say that the village has made mistakes in terms of placement and buildings. The fire obviously caused the havoc. And a lot of people, even today, want to see the village brought back, the way it used to be. But we really have limited space for development and growth now. And what I think you're seeing is taking what you have and having it changed and modified over something else. Canning Street, we've had the fire there. It took a while, but you had a new development there with a dentist's office. I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly, but it just seems you deal with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Unionville Station was originally not located in the village. It took time and effort to bring that into the village because it has sewers. So you have that. The village in the last 2 years, or 3 years now, I believe, have created a master plan. It lays out a different perspective of what we're looking at. And then most recently in December, they approved, I believe, a new zoning code.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another tool that the current board administration have to focus on for that reason.
Do you attend meetings anymore? Or are you just pretty much busy being a grandpa and you pay attention through the suburban news and word of mouth?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's harder for me to step away
Mm-hmm.
than it is some other people that had served. So when I see things that I'm not happy with or I dislike, I'm not shy about coming forward. The last meeting I attended was a zoning board meeting. Kim Fay, chairperson, he was aware that I was coming, and I was opposed to the manner in which it's Family Dollar, the new Family Dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not pleased with the way it looks, the facade on South Avenue. So I proposed that the current administration change and put the architectural district back into place that was taken out in the year 2014. So there again, the zoning board had no input into what the building was going to look like. Building permit was issued, things went forward. My thrust there was to come before the zoning board, encourage the zoning board to change the code, put the architectural district back in, wrote the letter, and went to Florida. But so the answer to the question, yes, I'm somewhat involved, and I like to stay abreast of what they have and what they're doing.
Couple things that came through when I asked you that prior question about the village changing and the future. You brought up two separate fires, the one in Canning Street and then the one I think that really hit the village hard in, I don't know, 64, 65.
March of 65.
Okay. And you would have been alive during that. I had Seb Burrett on a couple weeks ago and he had a firsthand account. What were your recollections of that day and what transpired after that with the village?
My two brothers, Roy and Earl, older brothers, on that Sunday morning, we didn't hear the explosion, but we saw the smoke and the sirens, and within 15 minutes, we're down there on Main Street, virtually standing on Main Street, next to Gordy's Sunoco station, and of course it was just a fire that we thought was going to be stopped. We just thought, well, they're going to put it out. And when we saw the expansion of the fire taking place and the windows being blown out at Warden's IGA, so yeah, I mean, it just left the village, especially the first year of how to recoup it and where these businesses going to go. As a result, afterwards, it's fair to say we know a committee was formed, and it's unfortunate, and we are looking at today maybe what we ended up with as opposed to what could have been. I can appreciate the business people saying we need to get something going. We can't delay. We need. The Arlington was the first to go in, criticized for its appearance compared to the Americana appearance of other villages. We can only hope that it gradually changes and more upkeep, architectural review and stuff is put into it. You just can't change history. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So the fire was in 65?
65.
Okay.
Yep, March.
And you would have been how old then?
I was 16.
Prior to that, what were your remembrances like on a Saturday afternoon? What would you have been doing if you were heading into the village? Now, Hines Street, which is where you were living, correct?
I was living on Hillside Drive.
Okay.
Yeah. So we moved into the village in 59 in one of Podger's new homes on Hillside Drive. 6 children in the family. bunk beds. Um, great neighborhood. Dead end street. Got to play with the Howe family, the Horlives and Howies, and I mean, it was a good really a good neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
to grow in. From there, I went to school to Henry Street School for sixth and seventh grade. Went over to the other school, graduated in '66. But yeah, we really life has been good from myself and the family in the
Mm-hmm.
village.
And so, what would I have seen if I were walking down Main Street prior to the fire? Like, explain to me the landmarks, because I know Gordy Sunoco where that is, which is I think is Dave Z's now.
Yes.
Okay, and I know where the Arlington is. Tell me a little bit what I would have seen walking the parade
The
route.
other. Well, going back prior to '65.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to '65, you had a very vibrant Main Street. The main focus would be probably the Candy Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You had Pleasure Shop, the two businesses competing for soda and ice cream. The Candy Kitchen is where my mother and father would go after the movie theater. Before my father would walk her back home to Hines Street, where my mother was born. You had the post office. You had Robert Jeweler on the corner. We had a meat market, Grotman's Meat Market, and it was just a hobble of small business. RG&E had an office there. You had McNull's Furniture. So yeah, you can virtually see it the way it was. Apartments up above, and at one point you had the village office on East Avenue above the old fire hall. So yeah, that's 59 right up until 65. Not too much was changing.
Mm-hmm.
You had 3 gas stations. A lot of people didn't know that on South Avenue, there was a gas station on South Avenue across the street from the hardware store.
Mm-hmm.
Life was pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in particular there was a Hart's grocery store on the corner. And my parents would say, all right, here's what we need. Can you just run down and get something? And they would give you your product, whatever you bought, but it was put in a box, wasn't put in bags.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're coming home, you're carrying a box instead of a bag of groceries. So yeah, there's good memories to the Candy Kitchen. There's Randy Livermore is doing some work there, and he had a picture of Nick Panaritas and Kula,
Mm-hmm.
and it received a lot of hits because I think a lot of people can relate going back to
Mm-hmm.
myself, my parents going there, the Easter candy, the gum underneath the
Yep.
table. So yeah, they're all great memories. I don't know what today's kids are thinking.
Too much device work. Let's talk about your immediate family. You had 6 kids in your family. Tell me a little bit about mom and dad, what they did for an occupation, and then your siblings.
Father worked at Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What was his name?
Elvin.
Ellen.
Elvin and Josephine. Elvin was a true farmer at heart. I think my father would have continued as a farmer in Albion if the barn didn't burn down. But he came into Hilton. He was a farm aide. Met my mother. He ran the merry-go-round at Batoma,
Okay.
where he met my mother. And when he come into Hilton, he obviously was meeting my mother at her house on Hines Street. My father worked at Kodak for 26 years. Unfortunately, he came down with some dementia, retired, and passed away when he was 68. My mother was a homebody, homekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say she worked harder than my father. But
He can't hear her now.
she kept us all in line.
Mhm.
My mother lived in Unionville Station for a while, ended up living with my sister, who lives here in the village, and she passed away at the age of 90. Um, and yeah, this was her homestead. So a lot of times when I run into older senior citizens, and they say, "Well, Larry Gursslin, you must be Josie's boy." Now my brothers, so I have two older brothers, two younger brothers, and a sister. I think we were the basic, typical family that we enjoyed our sports, friends. Again, Hillside Drive was a neighborhood of similar families, makeup.
What was your older brother's names?
Roy
And
and Earl,
Roy and Earl. And then you had some younger brothers too, right?
Denny, Glenn, and finally Joyce.
Joyce. What type of qualities do you think you got from your mother and then your father?
My father, there's no doubt in my mind, my father gave me confidence
Mm-hmm.
to tackle things, do things. It can be anything from carpentry. Um, my father was not shy, but my father, I'm going to say my father was very intelligent. 8th grade education. But the story I like telling is Dr. McCaffrey lived across the street from us.
Mm-hmm.
My father is building a 2-story addition to our house in the back. We have a slope. And so my father decided to build this 2-story addition. And Dr. McCaffrey came over and was looking how progress was being made. And when he said, "Where are the plans?" my father simply pointed to his head. But he he just didn't get a chance to use as much of his intelligence. But I think he gave me the confidence for a number of things to don't be shy.
Mm-hmm.
You can do something. Try and do something. On the other hand, my mother, who was very level-headed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember my parents ever arguing.
Mm-hmm.
My mother simply, like, she wouldn't get mad, she wouldn't get depressed. She was just so level-headed, and I think for the most part, if people said things to my mother that I think derogatory or would be upsetting or an insult, she wouldn't take it that way.
Mm-hmm.
She just was so level-headed. So I think there's no doubt in my mind I picked up some of that. And I'll use an example. If you're at a village board meeting and you have people not happy with you, yelling at you, telling you what they think of you, I could relate to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
What would my mother do? And she would say, "Well, why don't we call time out? And why don't we get together tomorrow morning and have a cup of coffee at the village diner
Mm-hmm.
and see if we can't resolve our differences there?"
24 hours makes a big difference.
Mhm. Yeah, in the heat of the night.
So what'd your father do at Kodak?
He worked assembly line.
Mm-hmm.
He would put the velvet on the 35 millimeter magazines,
Mm-hmm.
and he did that consistently for years. Um, he tried some night schooling. I know he tried to better himself, but there was a time period where if you worked long enough, and you had seniority, you could be promoted and work into the office environment. So he worked in building 135 called Sundries. He was an excellent bowler and fishing. He loved fishing, bowling. Um, but yeah, it was difficult to watch my father's health deteriorate. My mother, in the same token, 8th grade education. She went to from Hines Street. She went over to the Henry Street School, but left there and got a job at Kodak. Well, we'd come home on weekends, take the bus. Life was pretty simple.
So you said your dad had challenges with dementia. How many years was he struggling with that?
That would be 13 years.
13 years.
So came down at the age of 55. And we couldn't believe it when my mother said that, I don't think he can remember your names. But I think he did a very good job at, I use the term faking it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I asked him what's my name, his reply would be, well, you know what your name is.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother took care of him for 10 years, 10 of those years.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult. But the good news, I think she knows that both of us kids stayed around the village, tried to help her, support her. I give a lot of credit to my sister, who picked up the slack, brought my mother over to her house. But my father ended up at Canandaigua Veterans Hospital.
Mm.
I will say that the Veterans Hospitals, the service and the care, excellent. If you've heard horror stories, it didn't happen on our family.
Mm-hmm.
We could go there during the week, anytime. They kept us informed. But his last 3 years were spent at Canandaigua Veterans Hospital.
He was a veteran of World War II?
Yes and no.
Okay.
He went in 1944. He was 44. Unfortunately, he served 6 months and he got a honorable discharge for medical.
Okay.
Yeah, did not see overseas duty.
What was the neighborhood like with all the Gursslin family? Like, what did you all do for fun?
Well, we built forts out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
We had enough friends. We would make an agreement with Podgers, who were still building houses on Hillside Drive, on what wood we could take and what wood was still being used for the house. But I think building some forts seemed to take up time. If we weren't doing that, we would do our chores on Saturday morning. It was pretty much, I think, Hillside Drive kids were doing their chores on Saturday morning and pretty much told, go outside and play.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go over to Dr. Keller's house. So there was Chris Keller, Nathaniel Keller, Tobias Keller. They're over there. And if we got over there, Dr. Keller would let us kids ride his tractor. Yeah, there was always something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Playing baseball was another. We would go on the fireman's field. We would take on some kids from Overlook Drive. Mm-hmm. So you got Overlook, Hillside. We were the Hillsiders. They were the Overlookers. And you just get 5 kids here, 5 kids there. You grab one of their parents, and one of the parents would be the full-time pitcher. And it seemed as though we didn't have organized sports or organized gatherings like you do today. But the other point he reminded me of is the ice skating rink. So we had an ice skating rink down by the old sewer treatment plant, mm-hmm. down by the trestle. And in the wintertime, without being in a Village 2, no Village 2, you just had an open field, a dark open field. But if we had 3 or 4 of us kids get together, and we had a path made from Hillside Drive, walk through the field, up over the trestle, and down into where the ice skating rink was. The fire department would have the hose down there. They would take care of the ice rink from time to time. There was a fellow that had a tractor down there that would plow it, keep that out. I'm trying to think of his name. And they had a warming hut. So I believe it was a recreation program, mm-hmm. but there was a wood burning stove. It was a small little garage that was down there. And you go down there, you kick off your shoes, put on your ice skates, nothing like that today.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was just a combination.
Sounds really, really cool. What was your chores for the family? Did you have your main chores, or what'd you do? Inside, outside?
Well, I'd rather sweep the garage floor
Hmm.
than wax the basement ceramic floor. Yeah, we had our. I think the key was making sure that my mother wanted certain things in the basement brought up for canning for the week, what we're going to have. But it seemed like mostly cleaning up, just clean up, uh, make your bed, your clothes need to be washed. You take them down, put them by the. You just had a
Hmm.
certain set routine, like I think most kids did.
Hmm. You had bunk beds too. I remember you saying that earlier too, right? 3 sets?
We had two sets that took care of four. My sister got the single
Hmm.
bedroom, and my oldest brother Roy got promoted to the basement, the walkout basement, so that we weren't in violation of a fire code.
What do your brothers end up doing, or what are they up to now in terms of occupations and things like that?
We're all retired,
Okay, good.
even my sister.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I had one brother teaching, another brother day healthcare, um, assembly line working, electrician. I think we're all diversified.
Hmm.
My job in particular was purchasing and planning Kodak.
Okay. 6 kids. That's a big family. Tell me some of the positives from a big family and maybe some of the shortcomings if you ever could think of any.
Positive. I think the positive was that we felt very connected as a
Hmm.
family. Sunday trips to see grandma and grandpa out at the farm in Albion. Um, it seemed like, especially on weekends, the family connections and
Hmm.
trips. Every 4 or 5 years, we would take a trip to California in a station wagon,
Hmm.
all of us. A 59 Pontiac station wagon had a seat that was faced backwards. And so, yeah, if you're taking a 5-day trip to California and you spend 2.5 days looking at where you have been, uh, that was something because we go out to Disneyland, see my aunt and uncle, and ultimately my grandparents on my father's side moved out there,
Hmm.
and an uncle moved out to California. So it was during the '60s. So that was a big part of, okay, is this year, are we going to go to California or not? Um, yeah, I just summarized everything
Hmm.
around our family,
Hmm.
our close family.
Station
Neg-
wagon.
Negatives. I can't.
I don't know negatives, but like I came from a big family, and the connections is true. Sometimes you're like, oh man, when I don't get time by myself, or maybe I wish mom and dad could spend more time just with me. I don't know,
We
but
had,
maybe people have different experiences.
well, my father went fishing
Hmm.
with some friends of his. 1 year he would take my one brother, and the next year he would take the other brother.
Nice.
So we couldn't all go the same.
Hmm.
But I would learn how to catch a pike in Black Lake,
Hmm.
um, sort of thing. No, I can't think there was any. We look back and say what went right, what went wrong. Can't think of the things really that went wrong.
Well, I like it that you said how your dad just worked super hard and mom just had that level headedness to you. Sounds like a great combination. Let's go back to your service as mayor. So you were from 1982 to 1998. What made your decision to step away at that time?
Well, it was a fairly easy decision.
Okay.
Uh, Actually, my preference would have been to have stepped away even 4 years before that. So if you went around and asked the community, who wants to be mayor? Who would like to be mayor of the village? I really don't think there's that many people that really want or would seek the job. But I knew one person who I knew would do the job, and that was Bill Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Carter's father, Hank, was mayor. Bill, fire chief. I mean, well known, respected. And I met Bill one time in an office in the fire department when I was on South Avenue, asking him when are you ready to run?
Mm-hmm.
And his response, if I recall, was that he was not going to challenge me. And I said, "But you don't have to challenge me, really. The village could use you. Come on board. It's time for new leadership, new direction and stuff." Bill's response was pretty much, "Well, why don't we do this? Why don't I run for mayor, but you run for trustee?" Which kind of surprised me. And I didn't think that would work. So I really don't think it would work. My thinking was that I would be sitting on the board as a trustee if I was elected. You would be the mayor. And so he's in charge at public hearings to address the general public. And I'm going to sit there and keep my mouth shut,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And so we made a gentleman's agreement. Why don't we do this? Okay, if nobody else is running for trustee and I fill that seat, I'll be able to be there to help assist him if he needed it. But we need to go and meet the following year or 2 years and say, is it working or not? Do we think this strategy is working? I don't want to do any overshadowing. It's his bailiwick there. It worked out so well. It really did. So I ran for trustee when I wasn't the mayor. I ran for trustee, successful, Bill being the mayor. And I think generally we concurred and said, okay, because if you're looking at respect and teamwork, if you're a member of a team and you're not power hungry, so it worked out. It worked out very well, and Bill did a fine job. Bill sort of came in at the loop and continued on with Unionville Station.
Okay. So between 98 and then you were mayor again from 2006 to 2010. Were you a trustee during those 8 years in the interim?
I was a trustee for 4 years.
Okay.
Then I was off.
Okay.
I was completely off the board. I became a building inspector and code enforcement once I retired from Kodak. And that took me to Hamlin, Clarkson, and ultimately Kendall.
What made you come back into the mayorship? And what did your wife think of that?
I had her support,
okay.
Number one.
Mm-hmm.
I bounced around the idea, and actually I missed doing doing some of the tasks at hand. The village office staff, I knew I could pretty much walk back into it. At the time, I didn't think anybody else was going to want the job.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Gates, trustee Jim Gates, stepped up and decided to run for mayor. At that point, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I should have stepped down. I should have withdrawn my nomination. In hindsight, Jim Gates would have been a fine mayor. He was in charge of the budget. He knew the office staff. He knew also the public works department. He was very close to the public works department. But I was successful. I will say that at the results of the election, Jim was one of the first persons to come over, shake my hand, congratulate me,
mm-hmm.
and we continued serving on the board together. But it took a while to realize I should not have run that last time.
Mm-hmm.
He should have taken over the realm.
Did he? So did he served on as a trustee as you were the mayor. Okay.
Yep. So his term, he was running for mayor. He had 2 years in running for mayor, and he still had 2 more years as a trustee.
Okay. You've mentioned some names here: Jim Gates, Bill Carter, Steve Spear, Charlie Lisso. Any other notable people or moments that you've experienced in local government that you can think of? And sometimes it's hard because I know you don't want to leave anybody out.
Oh, any other people?
Like that you ran across with the maybe with the departments that you oversaw as mayor, and certain leaders in certain departments, maybe the rec department, zoning board, planning board.
The rec department is Parma.
Mm-hmm.
It's Parma.
Okay.
I think about overall the people that I've had opportunities to work with. Some of the personalities, tasks, and stuff come forward. You have been fortunate, and I'll say blessed, to work with people who are very intelligent. Jim Ingham was our village administrator. He was his job was replaced by Janet Surridge. Then you have Sherry Wilson Pierce, and you have Amy Harder. The guys over at the Public Works, you had Tom Tilvine, Mike McHenry, and the current leadership over there, Jeff Pierce. So it's we're as a community, I think, fortunate that we've never really gone outside, because if you're working with these people, I think you find that these people are sharp. They like their community, and they can do the job. I will say this: when I became mayor, what was obvious to me was that there were no women on the zoning board, planning board, administration, all men,
Mm-hmm.
all men. And so one of the tasks I had was saying, let's increase the membership on the zoning board. And we had 3 men. Lola Ray Heinrich, she was president of Ogden Telephone. And she lived in the village, her husband being John Heinrich. And I said, I think we should expand the zoning board to 5 members instead of 3, primarily because the chairperson would go to Florida and then be 2 members, and they would delay. So I said, let's expand. And so we did. And I was appointing Lola Ray Heinrich,
Mm-hmm.
which caused a problem. Comments were coming from my fellow male co-workers
Mm-hmm.
and people that
What year would this have been?
this would be 1982.
Okay.
I said, I think expanding and having some women on board would be a good thing for us. But it's surprising the amount of off-the-wall comment you were getting about are they going to make these decisions and understand. So that was the beginning.
Okay.
Then we looked at the planning board, and there was a classmate of mine, Linda Viney, and she has been quite active in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say ever since. She ended up getting a Citizen of the Year several years ago. Linda Viney was put onto the planning board. And so gradually, we have had some female leadership. And I give so much credit to Janet Surridge, making her the village administrator that's now a village manager. Not an easy decision, but yet she did an overwhelming job, as well as Sherry doing the leadership right now. And I think some of that, in my opinion, came from me working at Kodak and realizing that my supervision was changing and having female leadership at Kodak. So again, going from all men, all in control. We even put in the Suburban News, opening for planning board,
Mm-hmm.
opening for zoning board, looking for applicants to submit an application. And what we received was application from men. So is a I don't want to say as small and minor as you may think. That was a change here for the village. So you currently have 2 women on the village board
Okay.
that you didn't have in the 1980s.
And they are, is it Sherry Farrell?
Yeah.
And
Sherry
who
Farrell.
else?
You have Zam, pronounce her last name.
Okay. I think I know. I've seen her on election signs.
Yep, she lives in Village too.
Okay. Well, that's actually a big legacy item for you, getting the female population more involved in local government.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. It just happened. It just
Mhm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
And Janet, when Janet Surridge was working, I received a phone call from the press sometime. If she's watching this, she'll love it. I referred to Janet as a duck going across the pond.
Mm-hmm.
It was a compliment, but it didn't sound like a compliment when I'm talking to the press about her being a duck going across the pond.
Mm-hmm.
What I was referring to was that she's going across the pond and everything is very smooth and going, but nobody sees all of the work
Right.
that's going on below the surface. And so upon my retirement as mayor, she presented me with a stuffed duck.
I like the explanation. Pretty good analogy. Let's go back a little bit to your schooling in the village, about your elementary and then high school experience. You said you graduated in 66.
Correct.
And the high school at that time, was that at the West Avenue Quest School? Or
Yes.
were they, okay. Any memorable teachers, administrators, or moments that you had? 60s, what was culture like?
Well, I would have to say that the dress code
Mm-hmm.
was such that you really didn't wear blue jeans.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't wear a sweatshirt inside out. You had Cliff Wake as the person to make sure you didn't have any taps on your shoes. Things were pretty strict. No smoking. Obviously, probably the one thing we have back then was discipline. There was there was strict discipline, and the teachers were in charge. I'm sure you can relate to all of this. Things just seemed to be organized, and your parents stood behind the teachers. So if there was punishment to be had, that is a recall. I would say also that there was respect for teachers. I'll give you an example. And I just happened to take a picture yesterday when I was in the community center. Joe Tolhurst was not only the coach, phys ed, Dean Chris as well, but Joe Tolhurst ran the sports programs. He, I think, lived to be 99. We'd have to ask John Foster, I think, told me he lived to be 99.
Mm-hmm.
Left Hilton. I lived on Overlook Drive. I left Hilton, went to retirement in Syracuse. But I think Joe was such a well-known, respected person. As mayor, we changed the gymnasium to the Joe Tolhurst Gymnasium. So if you go there today in the community center, there's his name onto there. This school was not my forte.
Okay.
I did not strive to get A's, unlike my wife. No, I pretty much knew that if I got a C, I would pass and life would be good.
Mm-hmm.
But the teachers were, we've had class reunions. I've attended most of the class reunions, and we can have good recall on what it was. I think a couple of things when you look back and try and picture what it was like there. One thing that was odd was that there would be tractors that would be in the parking lot because we had students that didn't have cars, but they had their tractors. And it wouldn't be unusual to have the students drive their tractors in, park them in the parking lot, and then the possibility, if you look at the Quest School on the west side, there is a garage door that's no longer there, but you can see the brick that took its place. But the tractors could be brought inside the shop, and then the students could work on tractors.
No kidding.
It's all part of the Future Farmers of America class. So how do you teach kids today in high school to work on some of these motors, change the oil, look at the hydraulics and some of that simple stuff that a lot of us, a lot of the kids were farm kids.
Were you in any clubs or any athletics, or what were your hobbies when you were going through high school?
Mine would be arts.
Mm-hmm.
I thrived on art. Mrs. Crosby encouraged me. I don't remember a lot about the other classes so much as looking forward to gym class. They had me on what was called back then Leaders Corps, which pretty much meant if you didn't want to go to study hall, you could go to the gym. And if you're in the gym, we had a trampoline. And back then, going to school was more fun than work. And because I majored in art, I wasn't under the gun to really look at being college material.
Mm-hmm. What type of talents did you have in art? Was it drawing, painting?
Probably both.
Okay.
I used my talent when I went to Germany in the Army, and I painted a mural on a wall with a colonel, 52 feet long and 19 feet high.
What was it of?
Took me 3 months. Statue of Liberty with New York City in the background. The time I had in Germany was it was actually difficult, but yet enjoyable. And the reason for that is that I had orders for Vietnam, and my brother, Earl, replaced my orders, and he went to Vietnam in my place. So I had orders for Vietnam out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that was in 68 and 69, those years. So instead of going to Vietnam, they changed my orders, and I went to Germany. And while in Germany, I continued my artwork. And I would be painting pictures, giving out pictures, drawings, and once I became known by the colonel as someone who enjoyed painting, he pulled me into the ranks and said, "Well, if you like painting, how about painting a mural on this wall?" I had never painted a mural on a wall, but he gave me his Jeep. He said, "Here's the Jeep, and here's the paint." And I said, "Colonel, sir, what would you like?" He didn't have anything in particular, so I made 4 sketches. One was the Midwest, one was a California surf, New York City, and he ended up picking New York City. So, it was 3 months, but keep in mind, while I'm on a scaffold and I'm painting, I'm aware of my brother who's in Vietnam. My other brother, Roy, fortunately went to Hawaii. So there were three of us in the military at the same time.
Did Earl make it through Vietnam?
He did. He did, and he lives right here on Hillside Drive in the village, the old family homestead. Yeah, Earl married to Kathy and 2 children, and they're doing very well. And we have breakfast on Wednesday mornings.
Did you take a picture of the mural when you're done? Like, do you have a copy of it? I'd love to see it sometime.
I have a copy. I'm pretty sure it's probably stuck to our refrigerator, the side of the refrigerator with a magnet. Yeah.
So how many years did you serve in the Army?
1 year, 11 months, and 6 days.
So you never did attend college? Because you said earlier during high school, if you got C's, that was good enough for me. And
actually, yes. Once I came out of the Army, I had the veterans bill, and I had Kodak. So I went back to work at Kodak. So when I graduated in '66, I got a job at Kodak for a year, volunteered for the draft in '68, and when I got out in '69, I realized I now had the financial means to go to college. So I went to RIT, and I was majoring first it was photography, then it was marketing, and then it was business administration. So for 9 years, I worked at Kodak and RIT part-time.
any other early jobs you had when you were in high school?
Well, I think like a lot of other students, kids my age, we would work at Kelly's, picking apples, Van Orden picking cherries. I went one day and got a job. It was the farm, the Kraken farm on North Avenue. So I worked for one day, but I realized I weighed about 120 pounds, and I could not pick up a bale of hay and throw it onto a truck. And so I got fired by the end of the day. Very diplomatically, taken aside. Here's the money. Here's the money you earned for today. But I really don't think you're going to be able to handle it, because I would be trying to pick up a bale of hay, pick it up, throw it on board. It wasn't my forte.
You were okay with that, right? And it's just not my cup of tea.
So I ended up getting a job at the Super Duper.
What'd you do with the Super Duper?
Oh, I was stock keeping. Stock keeping, and in '60, before I went to work at Kodak, Rolly Harris was my boss. He was paying me $2 an hour, and so my last 2 months at the Big M, they made me frozen food manager. So I was in charge of ordering the frozen food, what had to be stocked and whatnot. That was a good job, and Rolly was a hell of a manager. He really understood why I was leaving and going to work at Kodak.
What you learned from all those early jobs that helped you in your future? Obviously, Kodak has been important to you, and then also your governmental spots. What can kids learn?
Well, the value of money. We because we had a large family, we didn't get a weekly stipend from my parents. I mean, they had mouths to feed. I would say just realizing, look, if you want something, if you want a class ring, if you want to buy a yearbook, if you wanted a Hilton jacket, if you wanted a different pair of sneakers or something, my parents' budget was limited. And so I think having a job and seeing the value of money, I think that was important. It was important at that time. It was a good takeaway for us.
Tell me a little bit about your children. When they were born?
Well, our son, born in '77, and daughter Justin and Katie, 1980. They were both born in the same, well, both lived in the house on Hines Street that my mother was born in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved from there over to West Avenue. I would say our kids were growing up typical kids. I was playing softball twice a week, and by the time my son was old enough to be playing t-ball, it was time for Larry to retire softball, go over focus on my son there. My daughter, growing up just like Carol, following I think in her mother's footsteps, very caring, and they both excelled very well in school. My son took some leadership positions there, class advisor. I think he was on the council
Mm-hmm.
as well. Uh, Again, fortunate he accepted at Clarkson and graduated there with high honors. Currently works in engineering. My daughter went to school at Monroe Community College and Brockport, graduated from Brockport in communications. And for a while, she worked at Channel 10. But with her starting a family, it's probably a newscaster, and working is not, with the hours, is not the best, maybe for family oriented.
Mm-hmm.
But they've both done very well. They're happy, they're content.
Grandchildren. Tell me about them.
Well, we do not see our grandchildren in Wisconsin, Charlie and Rachel, but through the technology of FaceTime, texting, we were texting our granddaughter Rachel, who's in Florida right now, attending a wedding. They both, oldest is Charlie, who graduated, is taking some college, and our granddaughter Rachel is a senior, and she's looking at attending, I think it's the University of Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And our Katie's children, that's Gavin and Addison. Addison is the older. She is very active in her church, Hope. She just came back from a 1 week school break and had been working downtown Rochester with, I guess, and hundreds of other kids working on projects for the poor, the needy, and she plays flag football for Greece Arcadia. And Gavin is into sports. He playing football and baseball, and he's going bouncing back and forth from being JV to varsity, which takes up a lot of our time because we get to put aside some of our activities and obviously try and watch them. So it's difficult because here you have 4 good kids. We get to see 2 of them more often, but through the media, we get to communicate with our others in Wisconsin as well.
What's it like going from parent to grandparent?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I think it's knowing that you don't have the responsibility that you had, the nurturing and the values that you may have implemented. You're, I think, sitting back, watching to see how they are doing with their children. Do they have the same mannerism and approach and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the most part, the answer is yes. I don't see any stark difference.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pleasing. I'm sure if Carol would agree, it's very pleasing to look and see some of the same values that we had in place being not pushed, brought on as well.
By your children.
No complaints.
What history do you want your children to pass down to their children about their roots?
Say it again.
What history would you want Justin and Katie to pass down to their children from where Justin and Katie came? You see what I mean? Like they're living in Wisconsin and
So
Greece,
not so much genealogy,
right?
and all of that kind of stuff. I think boy, that's a good question. It seemed as though it's the family values and what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think money and power and all of that is important. Boy, that's a tough question.
Well, as you start to mull that over, are Justin and Katie able to communicate much? Do they talk often, or do they come and visit together ever? Or?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. In January,
mm-hmm.
they both took cruises
mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
So, Justin and his wife and Katie, her husband, went on the same ship, same cruise. They're very much
With or without
together.
kids? Do they leave the kids at home?
Katie and Tony brought their children, and Justin did not. They had their priorities different. They're older, so they're a little bit older and older enough that it just didn't work out. But I would say weekly, probably not daily, but weekly, they're in touch. If we're talking to Justin, he might say, yes, I know. I talked to Katie, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Katie's like, okay, yeah, they're communicating. They're very close.
So did they had good experiences at Hilton? You could probably say.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd say excellent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the one, of course, lives in Greece, pretty close to Hilton.
I think the hard thing for Katie, being a cheerleader, she made the cheerleading squad as a 10th grader,
mm-hmm.
varsity. Our son is playing varsity basketball, and so she got to cheer for him, which you can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that bond goes back through their entire childhood and their togetherness.
It's sometimes said that as things change, they still say the same. What would you say about Hilton in that regard?
Well, things have changed. Things are not always the same here. And I think about what my mother, who was born here,
mm-hmm.
and remembers things. She was shocked when we had one traffic light. And then when she saw the second traffic light going up, that was changed. I think during the 70s, the growth in the 70s of apartments changed the matrix of the village from it being a very rural community where everybody knows everybody and people are involved in the church, the social structure and stuff of the village. My understanding is that changed where people were coming into the village who were originally from Hilton. And the next thing you know, the flux of people that came in during the 70s, because you had Cedar Terrace, you had Village 2, you had Parkwood. The village grew whereby we were creating a transient community. And so the people who were here weren't necessarily attending the churches, some of the schools. And so I saw and could relate to my mother saying, oh, the village has really changed.
Mm-hmm.
Taking away the apple orchards and having housing wasn't so much a change as much as I would say some people who were here were simply here because they like the suburbia versus 10th Ward in Rochester. People were moving out of the city and saying, okay, Hilton is a nice place. So I think the answer to your question, I think the change was the influx of people coming here and not feeling like they belong here. I said to a fellow named Bob Cousins, well, you're a Hiltonite if you remember the fire. So if you remember the fire in 65, and then you are here, you're a Hiltonite.
Mm-hmm.
After 65, the people who came here, there seemed to be a sense that, okay, well, I didn't remember the fire, and I don't remember this and that, and I'm just here and working here at Kodak and back into here. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I really like the red line there, the fire before Hilton night after. Why is Hilton attractive to newcomers though? Because we still have new housing developments coming up and people keep coming.
I would say that, in my opinion, it's the school district.
Mm-hmm.
When I go, I can go to a garage sale in Greece. I can go here and there, and they say, well, you're from Hilton. And what I hear is that, my brother moved there because he heard it's a good school district. And I think the school district has such a good reputation on that. And people who want their children to have a good education, I think that's number one. I don't think they're moving into the village for the charm.
Mm-hmm.
Spencerport, Fairport, you have 10 villages in Monroe County. And I think you know that when you come into some of these villages, they have a certain charm to them.
Mm-hmm.
You have your stores, and there's some of that, maybe some of the churches. But I think overall people say, okay, especially families, what's the school district like? I give high praise to the school district.
Hilton has special times like the Apple Festival. Your wife was heavy in that. Carnival. Can you think of other events or special times in the village that bring out its charm?
My first thought was the centennial celebration.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a one-time event. You had for a while there, the Kathy Turner special events. I think now, I know now, you have a car show, something that is now put on by the village administration. I think that's a drawing card. You have some garage sale. I think it's a one-time garage sale event going on at the community center.
Mm-hmm. Christmas tree lighting too. I like that when they do that.
Yes. There's a fellow that passed away, Ron Gosnell.
Recently, right?
Passed away recently. Ron Gosnell was my vice mayor. And it goes without saying that Ron was a local barber. He ended up moving to Florida when he retired at an age, I think it was around 53, 54. Ron and his wife, Dorothy, living on Unionville. But I mentioned Ron in a special event of some sort. Once a year, the village appoints a Citizen of the Year. When Ron was leaving, I was mayor, and I decided to start a Citizen of the Year. And Ron was our first Citizen of the Year. And it wasn't so much my nomination as the village board. And so we set some criteria, and we said, I think it'd be a good idea that once a year we take a person who is outstanding and recognize this person and give some credit and stuff. And the reason I just thought of it is that you mentioned about the Christmas tree lighting, normally done and lit by the person chosen to be the Citizen of the Year. And so Ron, when he passed away, I asked Larry Spear if he would go to the village office and if he would take the plaque, the very first plaque, and it highlights in the plaque that this plaque was brought about by people who served the village Parma community, and that these people be recognized. And it has Ron Gosnell's name down there. So at Burgers, Larry Spear came into the village office, took the plaque, and took it down to Burgers. I'm in Florida at the time. But I wanted to make sure that, again, there's events that take place, and then there's smaller token things. But Ron he had a pulse on the community. It's another person who could have run for mayor very easily, well-known, respected, and again, a person who I would have breakfast with on Wednesday mornings.
Well, Larry, it's been great getting to sit down with you during this podcast. Any final thoughts you want to add? I mean, you've brought up so many people, and you got a binder. So yeah, take a peek in that as I start to take over a look at my notes, and I've written down a lot of names that you've given me for possible future guests. Take a gander. What do you think?
How much more time have I got?
The floor is yours.
Briefly, I'm glad I mentioned Herb McNaughton, our newsletter, and our communication. So the village, during my term, we enjoyed coming out with a newsletter to promote communication.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to mention the post office. We were being forced to move the post office out of the village of Hilton. We disagreed. It's the postal authority we had no control over at all. And so if you asked me, during all of your term, what was the most important aspect and what took place that I'd have a high priority? And if you asked me that question, I wouldn't have the answer, because if you remember the fire department, it was a consolidation of the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
If you were looking at the post office, and again, Unionville Station, so there were certain things that took place for the seniors in our community. It's Unionville Station. I look at the post office as a critical point. In my opinion, when I think of the makeup and character of a village, I think you come through and you see a post office, you see a library, you see schools, you see churches, grocery stores, mom and pop stores, you see a pizza place, yes. And there's just certain things. When we knew that the post office was moving, I was able to contact leadership in Buffalo and say, give us 6 months. Give us 6 months, because we don't want the post office built on the corner of Burt Road, 259. We like it when people can walk and ride their bicycle and go to the post office and keep it centralized. But the federal government was difficult to work with until we got a 6-month reprieve and said, okay. So Walt Harleff, who was our vice mayor at that time, and the village board, I believe your dad was on it, and said, okay, here's what we can do. So I went over and I was talking to Roger Boyley in Greece. And I found out that Roger Boyley in Greece created what they referred to as a limited development corporation. And they were able to go and keep certain land area on Ridge Road where the old town hall was. And they did that through a limited development corporation. They kept the land and they were renting out the buildings that were built on top of it. And so with that, we went and said, okay, how can we keep the post office? It looked like there was no place else to put it. So with your dad's support and the board, we formed a limited development corporation. We were borrowing a little over $500,000. We hired a a real estate agent, and we set out to purchasing homes on South Avenue to tear them down and build a post office. I think it could have been quite controversial.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking tax dollars money, you're mortgaging the village here for the sole purpose of doing that. And the answer was yes. So today, the post office is located there because we formed that. We used that money, tore down the homes, had the post office built. The good news is this: it was like a 20-year lease agreement. So the land that the post office is on belongs to the village of Hilton. The parking lot belongs to the village of Hilton. And in a few short years, the lease expires,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore the post office building is turned over to the village of Hilton. Most people don't know that.
I don't know. I didn't know that.
It was a wise investment. And at the time, I think we were getting criticized because of the monies. The good news, again, is that I give Bill Carter the pat on the back. Bill was able to look at interest rates and work to reducing that bond that we took out, getting lower interest rates and paying off the bond sooner than expected. So it's working out very much in our favor. And we were able to accomplish our objective and keep the post office there. The fire department consolidation, again. The other is that old Hojack Road.
Mm-hmm.
When we bought that for $60,000 from, we formed a committee, and there was a fellow by the name of Ken Beal who said, we're looking at spending a lot of money. Some of the initial money was on engineering to say, where's the stormwater going to go? Who's going to utilize this? There's a fellow by the name of Fred Hunt. Fred Hunt owns Omega Consolidated Corporation with his children. Fred was a very strong proponent on saying, yes, if you can turn that abandoned railroad property, instead of it being sold off to those people who own businesses along there, if we can create that road, that will improve and virtually create almost a new main street in Hilton for commercial development. Most importantly is have a tie-in to the Merton Williams School.
Mm-hmm.
And so school buses then can run from the high school, the Merton Williams School, without necessarily going through Main Street, using up traffic at traffic
Exactly.
lights. So we put a feasibility study together. It came out and said, okay, again, you might have to borrow money, but engineering-wise, we can engineer this. We can put it together. Not only did we do that, but we also worked with the town ultimately to buy the rest of the property all the way to Colomer, so that now you have a piece of property that's being utilized.
Well, yeah, and on that old Hojack, there's the bus garage for the district, and then there's also a buildings and grounds building.
Now you got the fire department.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and how could I forget?
Relocated
Right.
over there.
Right.
So everything seems to have worked out well. I had two other comments here, and I'll be brief. Recycling.
Go for it.
Recycling started out so it was just like, here's a box, put your stuff in this box, and we're going to put it in the back of a pickup truck. That was virtually Herb McNaughton was was the person who got it off the ground. We did a lot of communication, and I give Herb McNaughton. We were the second village in the county, Spencerport being the first, and we were the second village in the county to start a recycling program. And I'll end it with street names.
Love to hear it.
Well, there was a street that was coming to be called Raintree Lane. We didn't know what Raintree Lane really meant. So there were two homes built on Raintree Lane. And the question was raised by our historian, Leith Wright. Why aren't we naming it Apple Tree Lane? So I went to talk to these two homeowners who have already built and bought their home and are living there. And once we saw the street sign going up, we questioned these folks, can we change the name of the street? And the answer was no. If you try it, we're going to sue the village. Really? And they said, well, our license, everything we have, our paperwork, and all of that. So we didn't fight it. We said, okay. But that was the catalyst that said, from now on, no more streets in the village of Hilton are going to be named after a developer or the developer's children or wife or whatever. So we went to Leith Wright and said, we want 10 names. We're still growing. And we would like to have you provide to us 10 names of streets that you think are prominent. So with that, I know I'm not going to name them all, but there's Verney Lane is off from Rain Tree. Archer Drive, I mean, the Archer family that lived there. You have Lloyd Lane after Vince Lloyd. You have Carter Drive. Now, in the back, Podgers had built Rolling Meadows, and he had already put in Clefane and Strusenberg. So when we knew that Jim Howarth was going to be building more homes, we said, okay, so there's Carter, there's Newcomb, there's Cross Lane, Green Lane, and so we had Leith put these things together. As mayor, one of the most enlightening things for me to do is to have ceremonies. So the office staff would coordinate it. We're going to have these families appear at the street. They're going to cut the ribbon. And so there were 2 or 3 names that I think was sticking out that was important. One is right behind the bowling alley, Panaritas Drive. Nick Panaritas and the family were there. To watch the expression on these families and saying, really, Panaritas Drive? And I said, well, there wasn't going to be any houses. Come to find out, there's one house there. But I can't tell you what it means for some of these families. Ross Albano, we have Albano Drive that goes around the back. I went over once we agreed on Albano, and it was on a map. If you got a couple minutes, it was on a map. And so after a village board meeting, about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, I called up Ross and said, I'd like to come over and talk to you. He thought maybe he was being fired. He thought he did something wrong. He was our building inspector, our code enforcement officer, a fine gentleman, someone who helped build the fire department, put the base of the gazebo in, just a part of this community. So I went over to him on his coffee table. I laid the map down, and his wife Rose was looking at the map, and he's like, okay, so he thought he was in trouble. And I said, no, Ross, I want you to look at this map and tell me if you see anything in this map that you think needs to be changed. And so as he's looking at this map, he spots his name on the street, and tears came to his eyes. And he's just like, why are you doing this? This, not deserving stuff. And I said, no. And think about it, Ross. Think about what you have done here for this community. And this is Leith Wright. This is Leith Wright's proposal. So that is kind of stuff that's meaningful. When Bill Carter was elected, we had already named Carter Drive after his father, Hank Carter. So we rededicated Carter Drive. But the one that's receiving probably more attention is Green Lane. So Green Lane, named after O.A. Green, Orange Green, if you're familiar with Orange Green. The Orange Green, again, a prominent person in the community, especially early growth and development. So his daughter, Violet Green, came and cut the ribbon when she was 90 years old. So the question is, well, you have a green lane, but there's no blue lane, yellow lane. There's no other street that has a color associated with it. But I think when we went to Unionville Station, so this is where it is what it is, but my name appears on one of the street signs. It was not my idea.
Right.
Was not recommended by Leith. It came afterwards, and I guess because of the hours and the time it took to put Unionville together, the board took away Roberts Road. The board took away Roberts Road and replaced it with Gursslin Lane. So I wasn't. I was not on the board at that time. I was brought in. Was I on the board? I don't think I was on the board. But I came in, and Bill Carter pointed to it and said, "I want you to take a look at that." Roberts Road was named after a former village official, town supervisor in charge of highway department, things like that. And so there's been minor controversy, but there's one street in the back. We have Leith Lane.
Mm-hmm.
That was not Leith's idea. We decided after her 20 some years, we're naming a street after her.
Mm-hmm.
The town of Parma, due respect to the town, does not name streets after what their historian may want. And so the other entrance coming into Unionville is Atchison.
Yes. Isn't there a cemetery named after that name as well?
There is. And the reason it's named Atchison is that Leith's sister, Shirley Cox Husted, who was her sister, who was the town historian at that time, was saying to her sister, well, the town does not give significance to the street names. And so she convinced Leith, can you at least take that one stub street coming in and name it after the Atchison family? And so we did. But otherwise...
well, it's interesting you talked about going over to Russ's house and seeing the tears come down his eyes and what it means when you would go to ribbon cuttings for these families. I'm going to ask about you when you found out that they were going to name that street Gursslin Lane. What were your emotions?
Well, I couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
The whole concept and stuff of Unionville, when it initiated with my mother, who wanted to know why her two friends were moving out, I wasn't thinking about street names. I was thinking about senior housing. But I would have to say it was Bill Carter who knew the time and effort being put into creating Unionville Station from the get-go until the shovels were coming in. It almost got to be 3 years, but we just stuck with it. And so, yeah, I was surprised. I just didn't ever expect what I thought was having my picture remain in the village hall
Mm-hmm.
as the next mayor
Mm-hmm.
would have sufficed. I said, that's fine. But yeah, to go home and to tell your wife and then to tell your children, yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. It's interesting when my relatives from California or other people are saying, okay, well, we're leaving now, but before we do, we're just going to stop and take a picture of the street sign.
Right.
That's fine. Life is good.
Well, Larry, over this podcast time, I've really gotten to know you even more. You should be proud of Gursslin Lane. You should have no qualms about changing it from Roberts to Gursslin. And your children and grandchildren and then their children are going to continue to take those pictures at that street sign.
I guess so.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining me.
You're welcome.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find